Montana Territory, 1878. Nathan Crawford pulled his hat lower against the driving snow, squinting against the blinding white as his tired gelding pushed forward through knee-deep drifts. The howling February blizzard had struck with the swift vengeance of a frontier justice, trapping him between Blackwater Creek and the distant safety of Fort Benton. 24 years old and 5 years into his life as a working cowboy, Nathan had seen his share of Montana winters, but nothing like this ungodly tempest. "Just you and me, Mercury," he muttered to his horse, patting its frost-covered neck. No sense expecting anything else out here. That was the truth he'd carried since watching his parents' homestead burn 3 years prior. The frontier demanded solitude. Love was a luxury for people in cities with wooden sidewalks and opera houses, not for men who spent their days chasing cattle across the endless Montana prairie. A cowboy survived by trusting his horse, his gun, and nothing else. Anything more invited heartbreak when the land eventually took it away. Through the curtain of white, Nathan spotted a dark shape, something that didn't belong among the endless swirls of snow. He nudged Mercury toward it, one hand resting on the colt at his hip. As they drew closer, the shape materialized into an overturned wagon, its canvas top half buried in the drifting snow. "Hello," he called out, voice immediately swallowed by the wind. "Anyone there?" When no answer came, Nathan dismounted, boots sinking deep. Probably abandoned. Smart choice, if whoever owned it had found shelter elsewhere. He approached cautiously, checking for signs of life, when a small sound caught his attention, a whimper, barely audible above the storm. He rounded the wagon and froze. There, huddled against the shelter of a wheel, sat a young woman wrapped in a fur-lined coat, her eyes closed and lips blue with cold. Dark blonde hair escaped from beneath a woolen hat, snow collecting on her eyelashes. She couldn't have been more than 22, and even in her frost-bitten state, her beauty was unmistakable. "Miss?" Nathan dropped to his knees beside her. "Miss, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, vivid blue, like summer sky, and focused slowly on his face. "I thought I was alone," she whispered. "Not anymore," Nathan replied, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. "I'm getting you somewhere safe." As he lifted her onto Mercury's back, climbing up behind her to hold her securely, Nathan couldn't know that Katherine O'Malley, lost in the merciless Montana blizzard, would challenge everything he believed about survival on the frontier. Katherine O'Malley had come west with dreams as vast as the Montana sky. At 20 years old, she had bid farewell to Boston society, accompanying her uncle on his quest to establish a cattle operation in the territory. Her parents' deaths from influenza the previous year had left her with little choice but to accept his offer, though she welcomed the adventure it promised. "You're safe now," a deep voice murmured near her ear as consciousness returned. "The storm's still raging, but we've got shelter." Katherine opened her eyes to find herself wrapped in blankets before a crackling fire in what appeared to be a small line shack. The cowboy who had rescued her was crouched nearby, adding wood to the flames. Young and handsome, with sandy hair and eyes the color of pine needles, he moved with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to handling himself in difficult situations. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice raspy. "My winter-line shack, about 3 miles from where I found you." He straightened, offering her a tin cup of coffee. "Nathan Crawford. I work for the Big Sky outfit." Katherine O'Malley. She accepted the cup gratefully, letting the warmth seep into her frozen fingers. "My uncle's wagon. The horses bolted when the storm hit. I tried to follow them, but got turned around in the snow." Nathan nodded. "You're lucky I was checking fence lines. Storm like this, most folks wouldn't have found you until spring thaw." The blunt assessment sent a chill through her that had nothing to do with the blizzard. "My uncle will be worried. We were heading to Fort Benton to meet his business partner." "Nobody's going anywhere for at least 3 days," Nathan said, gesturing toward the frosted window where snow continued to fall in thick sheets. This storm settled in. Katherine sipped the bitter coffee, studying her rescuer. Though young, his face carried the weathered look of someone who'd seen hardship. A thin scar crossed his left cheekbone, and despite his kindness, there was a wariness in his eyes. "Thank you for saving my life, Mr. Crawford." He shrugged, uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Anyone would have done the same." "We both know that isn't true." Katherine pulled the blanket tighter. "Not everyone would risk their life in a blizzard for a stranger." For a moment, Nathan looked at her directly, and Katherine felt something shift in the small cabin, a recognition of sorts, before he turned away to tend the fire. Get some rest, Miss O'Malley. We've got a long wait ahead of us. By morning, the storm showed no signs of relenting. Nathan woke before dawn from his makeshift bed on the floor, glancing toward the bunk where Katherine slept. In the soft glow of the banked fire, her face appeared younger, vulnerable in a way that stirred something protective in him. He moved quietly to avoid waking her, stepping outside into the still dark morning to check his horse and gather more firewood. The temperature had dropped further overnight, and the snow now reached the bottom of the windowsill. 3 days might have been optimistic. When he returned, stamping snow from his boots, he found Katherine awake and attempting to cook breakfast with his limited supplies. "You needn't do that," he said, setting down the wood. She turned, a smile warming her features. "I may be from Boston, Mr. Crawford, but I'm not helpless. Besides, it seems only fair I contribute something after you saved my life." Nathan watched as she competently managed his cast-iron skillet, realizing his first impression of a helpless society woman might have been mistaken. "You cook like someone who's spent time on a ranch," he observed. "My father believed in practical education." She flipped the Johnny cakes with surprising skill. "Besides, I've been traveling with my uncle for 2 months now. One learns quickly or goes hungry." As they ate, Katherine told him about her journey west, the death of her parents, her uncle's offer, and her determination to build something meaningful in this new territory. Nathan found himself drawn to her spirit, the way she spoke of the future with certainty despite all she had lost. "What about you?" she asked. "How does one become a cowboy in Montana territory at your age?" Nathan stared into his coffee, uncomfortable with personal questions. "Same as most. Came west looking for work, found it with cattle." "And your family?" The familiar pain surfaced, and he nearly shut down the conversation. But something in her genuine interest made him continue. "Lost them. Right on our homestead 3 years back. I was out hunting when it happened." Katherine's hand moved across the rough-hewn table, not quite touching his, but close enough that he felt her warmth. "I'm sorry, Nathan." The use of his first name, spoken with such genuine compassion, created a crack in the wall he'd built around himself. "It's the way of things out here. The frontier takes more than it gives." "Does it?" she challenged softly. "Or is that just what we tell ourselves to make the losses bearable?" Nathan had no answer, but her words followed him throughout the day as they settled into an unexpected domestic routine. Melting snow for water, tending the fire, sharing the small space with surprising ease. By evening, he found himself telling her stories about the cattle drives he'd been on, the characters he'd met along the way. Her laughter at his tales warmed the cabin more effectively than the fire. When she described her plans to help her uncle establish a horse breeding program, her eyes lit with a passion that Nathan found himself envying. It had been years since he'd allowed himself to want anything beyond survival. "You speak as if you can see the future so clearly," he said. Katherine tilted her head. "Can't you? When you look at this land, don't you see what it could become?" "I see what it is," Nathan replied. "Unforgiving. Beautiful, but deadly to those who don't respect it." "Perhaps." She smiled. "But I also see possibility, Nathan. A place where something new can be built." That night, as they sat before the fire, Katherine's head nodded with exhaustion until it came to rest against his shoulder. Nathan remained perfectly still, afraid to disturb her or the fragile peace that had settled between them. When her breathing deepened into sleep, he carefully lifted her and placed her on the bunk, tucking the blankets around her. As he returned to his spot on the floor, Nathan realized with unsettling clarity that Katherine O'Malley represented everything he'd convinced himself was impossible on the frontier: hope, connection, a future beyond mere survival. The blizzard lasted 5 days, not 3. By the 3rd day, they had established rhythms around the small cabin. Katherine reading aloud from the dog-eared copy of Tennyson's poems Nathan kept hidden in his saddlebag. Nathan teaching her to play 5-card draw with a worn deck of cards. They avoided talking about what would happen when the weather cleared. On the 4th night, as Katherine braided her hair before the fire, Nathan found himself studying the graceful movements of her hands. "My mother used to do that every night," he said, surprising himself with the admission. Katherine's hands paused. "Tell me about her." Nathan hesitated, then spoke slowly at first, describing his mother's garden, her talent for making something from nothing, her stories at bedtime. Words came more easily as he continued. Memories he'd buried surfacing like spring flowers through snow. Katherine listened without interruption, her eyes reflecting the firelight. She sounds like someone who saw possibilities too, Katherine said when he finally fell silent. She did. Nathan cleared his throat. My father called it her gift. Said she could look at a patch of dirt and see a field of wheat. And what gift did she see in you? The question caught him off guard. She said I had gentle hands for someone so stubborn. That I'd build something lasting someday. Katherine smiled. Mothers usually know. I haven't built anything, Nathan admitted. Just drifted from ranch to ranch, season to season. Perhaps you haven't found what you're building toward yet. Their eyes met across the fire, and Nathan felt something shift inside him. A foundation stone moved after years of being set in place. For the first time since losing his family, he allowed himself to imagine something beyond survival. Maybe not, he agreed quietly. That night, he dreamed not of burning homesteads, but of green fields and Katherine's laugh carrying on the wind. When the storm finally broke on the morning of the 6th day, Nathan felt an unexpected sense of loss. They prepared to depart in the clear, cold sunlight, loading Katherine's few possessions onto Mercury. Fort Benton is a half-day's ride, Nathan said, checking the cinch on his saddle. Your uncle's likely there, looking for you. Katherine nodded, her expression unreadable. Nathan, whatever she meant to say was interrupted by the sound of approaching horses. Nathan's hand instinctively moved to his gun as 3 riders appeared on the ridge above the line shack. That's my uncle's foreman, Katherine said, recognizing the lead rider. She waved, and the men changed direction toward them. Miss O'Malley, the foreman called as they approached. Your uncle's been beside himself with worry. We've had search parties out since the storm began. I'm fine, Mr. Peterson, she replied. Mr. Crawford found me and brought me to safety. The older man eyed Nathan with suspicion, taking in their apparent domesticity and Katherine's proximity to the young cowboy. I'm sure your uncle will want to thank you properly, Crawford. Nathan stiffened at the implication in the man's tone. No thanks necessary. Anyone would have done the same. We'll escort Miss O'Malley to Fort Benton now, Peterson said. Her uncle's waiting. Katherine turned to Nathan, her eyes conveying what couldn't be said in front of the others. I can never repay you for what you've done. Be safe, Miss O'Malley. Nathan tipped his hat, retreating behind formality. As the men helped her onto a spare horse, Katherine looked back at Nathan. Will you come to Fort Benton? My uncle will want to meet you. Before he could answer, Peterson cut in. We should get moving if we want to reach town before dark. Nathan watched them ride away, Katherine's golden hair catching the winter sunlight as she glanced back one final time. The emptiness that filled him as she disappeared over the ridge was answer enough to her question. Nathan spent 2 days convincing himself to forget Katherine O'Malley. He returned to the Big Sky Ranch, reported the fence damage from the storm, and resumed his regular duties. But her words haunted him, about possibilities, about the future, about what he might be building toward. On the 3rd day, he rode into Fort Benton, telling himself he was only there for supplies. The town bustled with the usual frontier activity, trappers, traders, and the occasional well-dressed businessman from back east. Nathan tethered Mercury outside the general store, then hesitated, his eyes drawn to the Grand Union Hotel, where wealthy cattle buyers and other visitors typically stayed. Crawford, he turned to find the ranch foreman, Bill Henley, waving him over from outside the saloon. Thought you weren't due in town until next week, the older man said, offering Nathan a smoke. Needed some things. Nathan accepted the cigarette. Any news worth hearing? Henley chuckled. Depends what you find interesting. O'Malley's making waves, buying up land along the river for that fancy horse breeding operation he's planning. Nathan's heart quickened. O'Malley. Yeah, that Boston fellow. Word is he's got serious financial backing. Oh, and his niece has half the eligible men in the territory falling over themselves. She's been asking about you, by the way. Nathan nearly choked on the smoke. Me? Said she wanted to properly thank the cowboy who saved her life. Henley raised an eyebrow. What exactly happened in that line shack, Crawford? Nothing that concerns anyone else, Nathan replied sharply. Where might I find her? To pay my respects. Henley grinned knowingly. They're staying at the Grand Union. O'Malley's hosting some fancy dinner tonight for potential investors. Nathan nodded his thanks and finished his cigarette in silence, mind racing. When Henley left for the saloon, Nathan walked toward the hotel, stopping at the entrance as doubt overtook him. What was he doing? A working cowboy had no business approaching a woman like Katherine O'Malley in public. Whatever connection they'd shared in the isolation of the blizzard couldn't survive in the real world. He turned to leave when a familiar voice called his name. Nathan. Nathan Crawford. Katherine stood on the hotel steps, radiant in a deep blue dress that matched her eyes, her blonde hair elegantly arranged. The sight of her struck him like a physical blow. Miss O'Malley. He removed his hat, suddenly conscious of his work-worn appearance. She hurried down the steps, ignoring the curious glances from passers-by. I hoped you would come. I've been asking everyone about you. So I heard. Nathan shifted uncomfortably. You're looking well. Thanks to you. Her smile faded slightly at his formality. My uncle wishes to meet you. He's hosting a dinner tonight for his business associates. Would you come as my guest? Nathan glanced down at his dusty clothes. I'm not exactly dressed for dinner with gentlemen. I don't care about that. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. I've thought about you every day, Nathan. About our conversations, about everything you showed me. The sincerity in her eyes made it hard to breathe. Katherine, there you are, Katherine. A well-dressed man in his 50s approached, eyeing Nathan with interest. Is this the young man who rescued you? Uncle James, this is Nathan Crawford, Katherine said. Nathan, my uncle, James O'Malley. Mr. Crawford, I owe you an immeasurable debt. O'Malley extended his hand. My niece is all the family I have left. Nathan shook the offered hand. Anyone would have done the same, sir. Not in that blizzard, they wouldn't. O'Malley studied him thoughtfully. Katherine tells me you work for the Big Sky outfit. Do you have experience with horses? Yes, sir. Worked as a wrangler before moving to cattle. Excellent. You must join us for dinner tonight. I'm assembling a team for my new venture, and I'd like to discuss possibilities with you. Before Nathan could decline, Katherine caught his eye, her expression pleading. Please say yes, Nathan. Caught between his instinct to retreat and the undeniable pull he felt toward her, Nathan nodded. I'd be honored, sir, though I'm not dressed for company. Nonsense. O'Malley clapped him on the shoulder. We'll fix that. Consider it part of my thanks. 2 hours later, uncomfortably attired in new clothes purchased at O'Malley's insistence, Nathan found himself seated beside Katherine at a long table in the hotel's private dining room. Businessmen from as far as Chicago discussed investments and cattle prices, while Nathan remained mostly silent, overwhelmed by the unfamiliar surroundings. Are you all right? Katherine whispered, noticing his discomfort. I don't belong here, he murmured back. You belong wherever you choose to be. Her hand found his under the table, squeezing gently. These men may have money, but none of them would have survived 5 days in that lined shack. Her touch anchored him, and Nathan found himself relaxing slightly as the evening progressed. O'Malley spoke enthusiastically about his plans for breeding cavalry horses, mentioning the Army contracts he was pursuing. When he asked Nathan about Montana horse stock, Nathan surprised himself by offering detailed observations about the local breeds and their strengths. As the dinner concluded, O'Malley pulled Nathan aside. Crawford, I need someone who understands horses and this territory. Katherine speaks highly of your character and competence. Would you consider a position as my head wrangler when we break ground in the spring? Nathan stared at the older man in shock. Sir, I'm contracted with Big Sky until the fall roundup. I can speak to your boss. O'Malley smiled. Think about it. The position comes with good pay and a cabin on the property. A young man could build a future there. Building a future. Katherine's words from the lined shack echoed in his mind. I'll consider it, Mr. O'Malley. Thank you. Later, as Nathan escorted Katherine on a walk along Fort Benton's main street in the clear night air, she broke the comfortable silence between them. What did Uncle James speak to you about? He offered me a job. Nathan watched her expression brighten. As his head wrangler when your operation starts. And Katherine stopped walking, turning to face him. Will you take it? Nathan looked at her in the moonlight, more beautiful than he remembered. Katherine, I'm not sure it's wise. Your uncle might have certain expectations about my intentions toward you. And what are your intentions, Nathan Crawford? Her directness took his breath away. I have nothing to offer someone like you, he said honestly. No land, no prospects beyond working for others. Just the skills in my hands and the determination not to lose anything else I care about. Katherine stepped closer. That last part is what matters most. The rest can be built together. You hardly know me. I know enough. Her eyes held his steadily. I know how you tend to fire through the night to keep a stranger warm. How you speak of your mother with love still raw after years. How you see beauty in this harsh land even while fearing its power. Nathan's carefully constructed walls crumbled at her words. I've been alone a long time, Katherine. So have I, she whispered, until a blizzard led me to you. When he finally kissed her, beneath the vast Montana stars, Nathan felt something shift inside him, as though the pieces of his broken life were finally finding new arrangement, forming something stronger than before. Spring arrived with the promise of new beginnings. Nathan had accepted O'Malley's offer, working out the remainder of his contract with Big Sky while helping plan the horse operation during his free time. Katherine remained in Fort Benton through the winter, exchanging letters with Nathan that grew increasingly personal as the months passed. Their courtship progressed under her uncle's approving eye, with Nathan riding into town whenever possible. By early April, as the first green appeared on the prairie, Nathan had saved enough to put a down payment on a small parcel of land adjoining O'Malley's property, his first step toward building something of his own. On a bright May morning, Nathan rode out to inspect the foundation of the barn being constructed on O'Malley's land. Katherine joined him, having developed a keen interest in the operations development. As they stood surveying the work, Nathan felt a certainty he'd never experienced before. This is going to be something special, he said, watching the workers set support beams. It already is, Katherine replied, slipping her hand into his. Their peaceful moment was shattered by the arrival of a ranch hand, riding hard toward them. Crawford, Miss O'Malley, the young man called, reining in his lathered horse. Trouble at the north pasture. Rustlers hit the new stock. Nathan's jaw tightened. How many men? 4, maybe 5. They're driving the horses toward Badger Canyon. Get back to the main house, Nathan told Katherine. Tell your uncle what's happened. I'm coming with you, she insisted. Katherine, they're our horses, Nathan. Besides, I'm a better shot than half your men. The determination in her eyes told him argument would be futile. Within minutes, they were riding with 4 ranch hands toward the north pasture, following the clear tracks left by the stolen horses. They caught up with the rustlers at the entrance to Badger Canyon, 5 rough-looking men driving 20 of O'Malley's finest horses. Nathan signaled the men to spread out, cutting off the rustlers' escape route. That's far enough, he called out. Those horses belong to O'Malley. The lead rustler, a scarred man with cold eyes, drew his gun. Back off, cowboy. These horses are headed to Canada. I don't think so, Nathan replied evenly, his rifle aimed steadily. What happened next unfolded with frightening speed. The rustlers opened fire, bullets kicking up dirt around them. Nathan pushed Katherine behind a rocky outcropping for protection, returning fire as the ranch hands engaged from multiple positions. Stay down, he ordered her, but Katherine had already drawn her own pistol, taking careful aim at a rustler trying to flank their position. Her shot struck the man's shoulder, sending him tumbling from his horse with a cry of pain. Nathan stared at her in astonishment before turning his attention back to the firefight. When the gun smoke cleared, 2 rustlers lay wounded, 1 dead, and the remaining 2 had surrendered. The horses, spooked but unharmed, milled nervously nearby. Are you all right? Nathan asked Katherine, checking her for injuries with trembling hands. I'm fine. She touched his face. You're bleeding. Nathan hadn't noticed the graze along his temple where a bullet had come too close. It's nothing. As they secured the prisoners and gathered the horses, Nathan couldn't stop glancing at Katherine, her composed determination in the face of danger, her unflinching courage. She had proven herself not just a society woman playing at frontier life, but someone who could face its harshest realities. That night, after the local sheriff had taken the rustlers into custody and the excitement had died down, Nathan found Katherine alone on the porch of her uncle's house, staring at the stars. You could have been killed today, he said quietly, joining her. So could you. She turned to him, moonlight silvering her hair. That's the reality of this life, isn't it? Nathan took her hand, running his thumb over her knuckles. Katherine, today made me realize something. I've been afraid of losing everything again, so I've held back parts of myself. But watching you face those men, I understood that courage isn't about avoiding loss. It's about believing something is worth the risk. He knelt before her, pulling a simple ring from his pocket, a silver band with a small Montana sapphire that had cost him 3 months' wages. I love you, Katherine O'Malley. I want to build a life with you, facing whatever comes together. Will you marry me? Tears sparkled in her eyes as she nodded. Yes, Nathan. 1,000 times yes. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Nathan felt the last of his walls crumble. The frontier hadn't taken everything from him after all. It had led him to Katherine, to love stronger than fear, to a future brighter than his past. July 1879 dawned clear and perfect over the Montana prairie. Nathan stood in the newly completed barn of the O'Malley Horse Ranch, adjusting his tie nervously as ranch hands and local families filed in for the wedding. The barn had been transformed with wildflowers and ribbons, a testament to frontier ingenuity and Katherine's vision. Steady, son, James O'Malley said, clapping Nathan on the shoulder. Though I've never seen a man look less likely to run than you. Nathan smiled. No chance of that, sir. In the 6 weeks since the rustler incident, Nathan had completed construction on a small but sturdy cabin on his land adjoining the ranch. Katherine had helped design it, insisting on large windows to capture the view of the distant mountains. Together, they had planted the beginnings of a garden where Katherine promised to grow flowers alongside vegetables, beauty and practicality coexisting, just like their partnership. When the fiddles began to play and Katherine appeared at the barn entrance on her uncle's arm, Nathan forgot to breathe. Her dress was simple but elegant, her blonde hair crowned with wildflowers, her smile radiant as she walked toward him. The local minister spoke of commitment and faith, of building foundations strong enough to withstand prairie storms. Nathan heard little of it, lost in Katherine's eyes as they exchanged vows and rings. I never believed I could find home in a person, he told her, his voice steady despite the emotion behind it. You showed me that love doesn't make the frontier less dangerous. It makes the danger worth facing together. Katherine's voice carried clearly through the barn as she promised to stand beside him through whatever life brought them. You found me lost in a storm, Nathan Crawford, but I found myself in you. As they sealed their vows with a kiss, cheers erupted around them. The celebration lasted well into the night, dancing, feasting, and the community's blessings surrounding them like a protective circle. Later, as they stood outside their new cabin under a canopy of stars, Nathan held Katherine close. My mother was right, he said softly, about my hands building something lasting someday. What do you see when you look at our land now? Katherine asked, echoing their conversation from that snowy cabin months ago. Nathan gazed out at the rolling prairie, silver in the moonlight, at the outline of their home and the distant shapes of horses in the pasture. Where once he had seen only harsh survival, he now saw possibilities stretching endlessly before them. I see our future, he answered, drawing her closer. And it's more beautiful than I ever dared imagine. As they crossed the threshold of their home together, Nathan Crawford finally understood what the frontier had been teaching him all along. That true strength came not from standing alone against hardship, but from finding someone with whom to weather life's storms, someone who made survival worth fighting for, someone who transformed mere existence into living. In Katherine's arms, he had found not just shelter from the storm, but reason to believe in tomorrow's sunshine.